Look up.
Hello, welcome to F13 Live. This is emergency coverage covering something that we typically don't usually cover, but regardless, the situation is not exactly that great at the moment. And of course, we have just recently dealt with a magnitude 7.2 earthquake that has rocked the island of Haiti. Of course, Haiti is part of Hispaniola, bordering the Dominican Republic. As of right now, it is unknown at the moment how significant the aftermath is. I am joined by two people currently, Usgs and Justin, especially Usgs, who has been monitoring the situation closely with this earthquake. And Usgs, what do you know? What has happened that in Haiti today?
So earlier today there was a magnitude 6.9 earthquake that had just struck in what's it called in Alaska like 30 minutes prior to this quake, and so we were talking about that quake, and then all of a sudden we noticed that, or at least I noticed because I monitor seismos, and I noticed that there was a lot of dark red coming in, meaning that a very strong earthquake had just hit a region, and it was in the Dominican Republic region, which is very close to Haiti, and so basically it came in as a 7.2, and on the and 7.2 is nothing to scoff at. Usually with 7.2s, on average, you would get 12 7.0 plus earthquakes in a year, and this a 7.2 is a significant earthquake, and it can cause a lot of damage. For reference, the 2010 earthquake that occurred in Haiti was only a magnitude 7.0, not like so. This was actually stronger, and actually, it seems as though we have just had another aftershock of Quake caught up. Sorry about that. I had something come up. And so just now, it seems as though a new aftershock or a revised aftershock has just come in for the Haiti quake. But I do want to mention though that I was looking at the seismos just a bit ago, and there was another decently sized aftershock that also came in. I would say like 5 minutes ago. So we're waiting to find out from the USGS and EMSC what the magnitude of this quake will be. But the Mag 7 Quake, this has caused a lot of damage from what we've seen. And this was caused as a result of a strike slip. This was a strike slip earthquake along the Enriquillo Plantain Garden Fault Zone, which is the same fault that caused the 2010 magnitude 7 quake that obviously killed a lot of lives and is one of the deadliest quakes of all time. So thankfully, this was not as close to Port-au-Prince as the magnitude 7 quake that occurred in 2010. However, it was also stronger, and I do want to point out that there is actually quite a big difference between the Mag 7.0 and a Mag 7.2. As a Mag 7.2 is, I believe, 20 times as powerful as a magnitude 7 quake. So a magnitude 7 quake is quite a big deal. And I believe a significant size aftershock had hit, again, as I mentioned, Haiti, like less than 10 minutes ago, and we're going to be waiting for the EMSC and USGS to rule on that quake, as I know that the USGS is probably on top of things due to the fact that this was the second magnitude 7 quake within the past 30 minutes, and that this magnitude 7 quake is getting worldwide recognition right now, as this quake has severely impacted the infrastructure there. And it's not just that. There's also a tropical storm on its way, on the way to Haiti at the moment, with Tropical Storm Grace that just formed in the Atlantic, heading into the Caribbean at this moment. And Fred just impacted Haiti a bit ago as well. So
Yeah, definitely not good timing at all, of course. As you just mentioned, Fred did just impact the area, so you've already got Haiti, which does not tend to hand tropical cyclones well. Thankfully, it wasn't as strong as it was, albeit the storm being weak before. But now, of course, we have Grace on the way. That was recently named at around 5 a.m. Eastern this morning, and that is on its approach there at the moment. So the fact that we had this earthquake before is definitely not good news at all. Definitely hoping that any recoveries can be done before they do get placed in those tropical storm watches and warnings. That is likely to happen soon, and we're definitely hoping that there weren't too many fatalities. There already have been reported deaths, of course, with this. We just don't know the extent as to how bad this is. We don't know the full extent as to damage. We know there's damage in general, quite heavy in some locations. It just remains a significant question as to how severe we're looking at, and it just makes us pretty uneasy in terms of people who have been tracking the earthquakes lately, with the fact that we already had to deal with the fact that we had quite the day, not just too long ago. I think we had 2 days ago or something like that. We had the South Sandwich Islands ones.
Yes, and actually, I do want to mention this. So, in terms of activity, there's been a ton of activity due to these quakes, and so this is not just the first magnitude 7 of the week. I want to give a perspective as to how many, like this week. I do not recall a more active week than this week ever when tracking earthquakes. We have had multiple sevens and a magnitude 8 quake, all occur within a span of less than a week. So I would say like 4 days ago, it started with a magnitude 7.1 in Mindanao, Philippines. Then the next day, the very next day, in around the same time frame as the magnitude 7.1 Mindanao, Philippines quake, a magnitude 7.5 earthquake struck the South Sandwich Islands, which was then immediately followed less than 3 minutes later by a magnitude 8.1 earthquake in South Sandwich Islands. And a magnitude 8 quake is even rarer than a magnitude 7. In fact, over the past few years, there's been less than, or past decade, there's been less than 15 magnitude 8 quakes. And this is the third one this year. And for reference, we didn't have one last year. And this, and we've been dealing with a lot of aftershocks of the magnitude 8 quake in the South Sandwich Islands. So then piling on the magnitude 6.9 aftershock, the 8.2 that occurred in Alaska, and the 7.2 that occurred in Haiti, and you have a very, very busy week when it comes to earthquakes. As well as just normal activity, like regular magnitude 5s just striking off the coast of, like, in like the northern mid-Atlantic ridge or stuff like that. So, like, for reference, this is extremely active, and I do not recall the last time it's ever been this active.
Yeah, something we definitely got to be watching in the next few hours. Of course, it's going to be a quickly evolving situation as we continue to get more reports as to the extent of this. We'll try to answer your questions in the chat, because I know there have been quite a few as of right now. We already answered the one about whether this was as bad as the 2010 one. Of course, we did mention the fact that this was also a 7 quake like the 2010 was. However, the location of it was not as in a place of impact in terms of fatalities as was the one that we saw. That is good news, but of course we are dealing with the fact that we are in between two tropical cyclones that are in the midst of hitting there now, and we do know that Haiti is not the best place when it comes to its ability to handle these storms. So the fact that we're dealing with an earthquake in between only makes me even more concerned as to what would happen, especially in the event that Grace goes in stronger than currently forecast.
Yes, and I do want to quickly mention that the magnitude 7 earthquake that has occurred in Haiti has already apparently claimed the lives of, like, um between, like, I would say, like, um it's claimed a few deaths so far. We don't know the exact number yet. There's been hearsay about certain reports. I can't reveal those. But at the moment, they have confirmed that there are deaths from this quake. And the concerning thing is that the USGS has put out a pager rating of red. And a pager rating of red is the highest rated pager that you can see. And usually that means that they are expecting basically a lot of fatalities from this event. And that's never a good thing. As for how many will actually occur, we do not know. However, there have been reports of people trapped under buildings, tons of collapsed buildings. There's been plenty of footage of that. There's been cracks in the middle of the road. Although this, in fairness, did strike. The epicenter was on land. So it did strike on the surface. So I think cracks, especially the size of Quake, is to be expected. But and the fact that this was stronger in magnitude 7 Quake, and basically the difference between 7.2 and magnitude 7 is that magnitude 7.2, correct if I'm wrong, I might be wrong, but I think it's 20 times as strong as a magnitude 7 is, or it might be more than that. I'm not 100% sure, but I'm pretty sure it's 20 times stronger than magnitude 7, because the amount of power that is used when the plates interact, basically more power is used when in 7.2 than magnitude 7. That's what I'm trying to get at. And usually you're able to see this through your seismos per se, which is what I've been monitoring as well. And there have been actually quite a lot of aftershocks from this quake, so but not all of them have been getting reported, obviously, because there's just been so many of them.
Yeah, in terms of what we know officially, the U.S. Geological Survey, shortened for USGS, all they have really said on this is that they're estimating high casualties as well as widespread disaster after that earthquake there. So we're hoping for the best, preparing for the worst in terms of the information we're going to be getting. And then, of course, there was that question about whether there was tsunami. No tsunami warnings were given, thankfully. The last thing
Actually, well, I would just like to add that there was a tsunami warning that was issued earlier, but it appears that it has since been rescinded.
Yeah, I was talking about right now. I was gonna get to that point, but yeah, thank you for filling that in. Then there was a tsunami warning, but thankfully that has been discontinued. Last thing we needed, of course, on top of this disaster was something that would have made it much further of a disaster, given the fact this, of course, was in the Caribbean, and the Caribbean has not been having the best of times the last few days, and unfortunately, the Caribbean is just not the best when it comes to earthquakes in general. So hopefully, this does. There is a happy note to this in terms of the fact that there aren't as many fatalities and casualties or any kind of damage as we feared. But of course, it looks likely that is going to be the case, that we are going to be seeing an unfortunate casualty amount, an unfortunate amount of damage, and we're really hoping that it's we're just hoping that those of Haiti are hanging in there. If you have family in Haiti, please try to get in contact. We're hoping that these aftershocks do end soon, because we're still seeing those. Of course, we have the 4.5 on there right now, and really it's just a matter of hopefully making sure that if you have contact with anybody in this area, please just get in contact with them if you can.
Yes, and I do want to quickly mention that so far this year, we've already surpassed, I believe, the amount of magnitude 7 quakes that have occurred this year. Already, and it's mid-August, because last year it was an extremely quiet year compared to average. Even though there were more magnitude 4s than there were the previous year, there were no magnitude 8.0 earthquakes over the span of last year, as well as only 9 magnitude 7 quakes, which is below average. And right now, we have already surpassed both in as we've had 3 magnitude 8 quakes, which is very rare, actually, and 10 magnitude 7 quakes, which is a little bit below average right now. And in terms of earthquakes that have had deaths so far, we've actually only had 1 quake that has resulted in, well, actually, no, 2 that have resulted in deaths. Um, there was one in Indonesia earlier this year, that a 6.2 that resulted in 111 deaths. Um, and there was the magnitude 7.1 that I mentioned earlier, that happened earlier this week. There was a man who died due to a coconut falling onto him. And so this, so far, would make it the third quake that I believe would have caused, well, actually, no, there's probably been more quakes that have caused deaths, but like they haven't been like put in the death toll list. So we're waiting right now to see what the situation is like in Haiti. And Haiti is also a very poorly economically. It's like the economic wise or economically, the country is extremely poor, and structures there are not good, which is why we've been hearing a lot of collapsed buildings and such. So, anytime a quake occurs in Haiti, it's bad. And I do want to mention that because it was on land, that is why there was. I don't think there was a tsunami because it was A on land and B it was due to a strike slip earthquake, which a strike slip earthquake, um, doesn't really like, especially on land, they don't really cause like they have a lower risk of causing a tsunami unless like a landslide occurs in the like offshore, which especially because it was on land, that the chance of that happening is nil. Um, but if it was a frost earthquake per se, there could have been a tsunami with it, but there wasn't, obviously, and we're thankful for that. But that does not mean that it was any worse than it is. So this is a very, if you're in Haiti, please make sure that you're safe and make sure that you help anyone you see under any structures because this quake has been very bad. And this is not something you'd want to wake up to.
Yeah, and we're starting to see some of those damage reports coming in. At least I'm checking the Twitter side of things. Of course, we can't exactly show this on here due to the respect of privacy and copyright, of course. But what I am seeing from this is completely destroyed buildings, rubble everywhere. Obviously, with all the rubble we're seeing and the collapsing of buildings, this has resulted in everything turning dusty remarkably quickly. And unfortunately, it's just something that goes on for quite a distance. Those buildings were not able to take such a strong earthquake as we pretty much, because these Igniter just really discussed about how Haiti is economically. They really aren't able to withstand these powerful earthquakes. So when you see these damaged buildings that are just like they aren't exactly what you would call damaged, they're just completely destroyed, completely collapsed. That is just a sign that it's just not good news. There's definitely some significant damage that we are seeing here, and obviously, as a result of this, it's definitely not out of the question that we've seen significant casualties out of this either.
Oh yeah, and I do. However, I do want to mention that I would think that there would be less casualties than the 2010 earthquake, not only because it's further away from Port-au-Prince, but because of the fact that the structures they really haven't been. They weren't necessarily rebuilt. Um, they weren't completely rebuilt. So because obviously 2010 earthquake occurred and that a lot of buildings collapsed in that. And obviously, there's been a lot of buildings that have collapsed in this quake, but I don't think there were as many as there were in the 2010 earthquake. However, I do want to bring up the point that it occurred at 8:29 a.m., so there were probably still a lot of people asleep at the time. So, yeah.
Yeah, I never said it was going to be as bad as the 2010 one. Of course, doesn't take away from the situation at hand, does not make this any less serious than what it currently is. Of course, this is still a very serious situation that is currently developing before our eyes here as we continue to figure out the details, the aftermath as to what has occurred here in Haiti today. And then, of course, with the fact that we've been seeing other earthquakes that are relatively strong. August has been a very geologically active month, and unfortunately, that trend has continued yet again today with that earthquake in Alaska. And then, not only that, we had that earthquake, of course, in Haiti not too long after. So we're just really hoping that this dies down, especially given the poor timing, especially for this specific Haiti earthquake.
Oh, and by the way, I am currently screen sharing the USGS Shade Map for this event if you want to bring it up.
In the meantime, I'd also like to mention that during this event, of course, aftershocks and everything involved with it had traveled to regions and other places in the Caribbean nearby, such as the neighboring country, Dominican Republic, Cuba, and Jamaica, that had suffered some damages as well and experienced some shaking. Um, right now, actually, I have a relative of mine that is in the Dominican Republic, and they were in a zone that experienced heavy shaking, and still don't know exactly what's the extent of that. But if I can find out more information, I'll definitely provide it.
That struck down here down to the south. I just rolled out of bed. I literally just rolled out of bed. I get a text message from my mom. I was up all night partying with you guys. Oh my god. Oh, I need to make some coffee. But okay, so I'm gonna have to get my morning voice out of here real quick. I don't know how I'm gonna do that. And we're gonna have to get this. Check it out, guys. Again, this is well, hold on. God, this is terrible.
Okay, so I had to mute that stream there because for some reason Usgs got background audio and of course copyright reasons there. So, all right, that's all fixed now. Anyways, we're still looking at the latest. I'm also here trying to look at any kind of reports as we can continue to get them. Not really much in terms of anything new, just a whole bunch of retweets at the moment as to what we've already seen so far. Although any more damage pictures that we are seeing continues to look very unfortunate. Just a whole bunch of collapsed buildings, and it's just not great at all. And of course, regardless, what we're looking at still, either way, it's still what is the third largest city that got impacted by this. So it's still significant either way. Still going to be dealing with the fact that there's quite a bit of people that live in this area that got affected by this earthquake. So obviously my heart goes out to those who are in there. My heart also goes out to those who have loved ones, family members, relatives, any people that they know that are in Haiti, especially near this specific earthquake. So hopefully, if you know anyone there, please keep in touch with them if you can. That would be the best of idea. Make sure that they're okay. Make sure that they're safe. Make sure that they're doing what they need to do to get themselves safe. And that's really what I can say about this, given the fact that this is definitely a serious situation that we have here.
Definitely agree with all those things you just said, because honestly, this is something that's unfortunate just to happen again in the same vicinity as the one that happened or just over a decade ago. Um, and it's just unfortunate that these earthquakes end up happening sometimes at places that are quite populated, and it's also unfortunate that buildings and livelihoods that had withstood the earthquake that happened near Port-au-Prince just over a decade ago may have been just destroyed finally now, and to go through all that just over 10 years ago and just experience something like that again, I it's unimaginable.
Yeah, just not something that we want to remember. Of course, the last one's only 11 years ago, so people who have lived here, raised family here, this is just another bad reminder to them concerning the fact that, of course, we had that one in 2010, and it's not like this was once in a lifetime event. This is something that happened 11 years ago, which, if you think in the grand scheme of things, as to events this significantly active, is really not that long. So it's just bringing back those really bad memories for those who had to go through the first time. But the fact that we're seeing yet another magnitude 7 earthquake in this region is just something that no one wanted. I'm sure no one wanted this. Obviously, no one here on the team wanted this. Especially the fact that we know how unstable Haiti is in terms of its economic situation there, and we're just hoping that people there are all recovering, looking at the pieces, and not dead, obviously. So we're really hoping that they are able to assess the situation at hand, and to make the decisions that will help them out in the future. Especially given what we've been seeing from them, and how they are obviously overall as a country. So obviously, I'm sure I've been seeing the prayers go out to Haiti in the chat. That is obviously real nice. That just shows you guys care as well. So obviously we care as well as you guys, and that's where we have that mutual understanding. It's where we have that empathy, and it's just showing that despite everything, we can all agree on something, especially when it comes to working together and caring for those who are in need in this, just like in this event.
I do want to quickly mention, however, that they're now getting a pretty significant aftershock right now. I do want to mention that. So
Yep.
but I also
I
want to
see
quickly
that.
mention that it does look as though that we're getting reports that either there are that there could actually be liquefaction, or maybe a small tsunami rushing in right now into Haiti. There are videos coming out of that, but take those with a grain of salt. Again, it could just be liquefaction, which with bigger quakes, liquefaction does happen. So yeah.
It doesn't really surprise me that we're seeing this right now. Of course, as we only have a very little amount of evidence of coming out that would show that, I can't exactly say what is going on. Unfortunately, what I do know from a verified source, this is breaking news. The hospitals in Haiti are now overwhelmed with patients, and this, of course, is resulting from the massive destruction following the devastating earthquake. So bad news there. Bad news that we did not want to see. The fact that we're now looking at those overwhelmed hospitals. This does come from a verified source, so this unfortunately is events that are actually happening at the moment.
Yeah, and honestly, this is just extremely sad. Like, I can't believe this. You know, it's very rare for Mag 7 to strike, but for 4 to strike within less than a week, that is, I cannot recall the last time that this has occurred. So, especially in Haiti. Haiti is just going through a really rough time right now, not just like with weather, but like with other things too. So, it's very sad.
Yeah, so unfortunately, looking at a worsening situation, as if the aftermath of the earthquake is not enough. Now we're seeing the aftermath of this start to take hold, and even then, that isn't any better than the quake itself, with the hospitals now, of course, getting overwhelmed. And that isn't exactly the best of situations, especially with the pandemic going on. So the fact that we've already got hospitals overwhelmed, I'm sure they're able to hold less people than they normally would, given the situation, and um, that isn't good at all. And really, we're just hoping that things do end up turning out any kind of better they can. Slowly seeing more damage pictures out of this, and unfortunately, it's still the same story with all the other ones. It's just complete devastation, complete obliteration of some structures, including just collapsing, just buildings breaking off in general. The scene is not good at all. I really can't put this any better into perspective about the fact that this is not any kind of good situation at all. So hopefully, I really can't really say hopefully anymore, because obviously, if we're going to be telling the truth here, it's continuing to look not so great here. So I'm really worried here about the people of Haiti right now. Uh, really hoping that they do make it out alright, especially with the aftershocks continuing, and the fact that we're seeing just how significant the damage is, how significant the impacts to people are, with the hospitals overwhelmed, and the fact that we've already got reports of significant casualties. So, I'm really concerned at the moment.
Something else I want to mention is that it's not just been earthquakes that have been increasing the activity. Volcanically speaking, we've had an increase in activity there too. So, earthquakes obviously do relate somewhat to volcanoes, as usually a swarm at one spot can actually, cause, it could be a signal that a volcano is getting ready to erupt. Now, obviously, There have been mostly the volcanoes that have been erupting are volcanoes that have been erupting for like within this past year, but there have been some new ones, including Fukutoku Okinoba in Japan. That volcano had a big blast. It's a submarine volcano, and so there's been that, and there's also been a bunch of other things that have been going on as well. So like this is very active times in the earthquake and geophysics community right now.
Yeah, it sure is. And now, does anyone else want to offer their
Yeah,
thoughts?
yeah. I was just gonna say all this stuff that's going on is really unfortunate. And unfortunately, tectonic plates and all these different fault lines must have had a lot of pressure built up over time, and unfortunately, it's all coming out now and in locations that we wouldn't want them to happen because there's been many cases where we would have, 7 magnitude quakes that would happen in areas that are sparsely populated or not populated at all. And unfortunately, in this case, it just had to happen in an area that had a lot of people, and not just a lot of people, but also a lot of people that are very vulnerable to these types of events. Because the infrastructure, despite the initial earthquake in 2010 in Haiti, despite rebuilding, those reconstructed locations aren't reinforced because the amount of funding available and the amount of resources. So any buildings that were reconstructed are at the same standard of before the first earthquake. And to see those structures collapse now is really unfortunate and really tragic because they just didn't have the funds and resources to uh, construct like other areas where they are prepared for these types of things.
Yeah, Haiti is a very, very impoverished country, which means that which means they are definitely not as prepared for these types of events as say in other areas, but probably not going to be as bad as the Port-au-Prince earthquake back in 2010, but this is Haiti, so it's probably going to be very, very bad regardless.
Yeah, and we do have footage of what appears to be a tsunami hitting Haiti, and that that's not what we want to see, especially after the tsunami was canceled originally. Uh, I really hope that is not real footage, and I hope that's fake. But I'm doubting it that it was fake, considering that um you know it looks genuine. And what sucks is that obviously all these hospitals are overwhelmed and stuff. Um, it okay. So now we're actually getting confirmation that it was not a tsunami. It was due to a breakage of a layer or large. I'm not sure if it's actually called layer, but of a water pipe rather than a tsunami. But still, sea receding locally is confirmed. So, stay away from beaches because there is no even though that was not a tsunami, there is still receding. The sea is still receding in that area. So please make sure that you stay away from beaches and get as far inland as possible.
All right, so if for those of you viewers, you can see that there is a new map on our screen, and that is the USGS Shade Map for this event. Now, these colors you're seeing here are indicating a magnitude of around up to around Mercalli 6, which would indicate pretty strong shaking. With it could be more damaging, but it's still it can still cause serious damage though. And although there is a report of a not of a Mercalli of a rating of 9 on the Mercalli scale, as you can see here, and here's the liquefaction. There's now those of you who are on which is
It's
the
not
rate of ground failure you can see here. Now the darker colors means that there is a more probability of liquefaction now, with the darkest colors indicating well over 20%. And as you can see, unfortunately it does not appear to be any liquefaction near the capital. Well, let's see. And so we're probably not going to be seeing as much of a devastation as the 2010 earthquake, but it is still bad in these there. And you can also see the landslide that affects here, and the darker colors indicating a poor probability, in which up to around 2 to 5% in these areas, which in effect, see, there could be some landslides in some of these towns you can see here, right there. And now, you might be wondering how this compares to the 2010 earthquake. Now, here is the 2010 earthquake. You can see the mortality intensity is actually higher here than what we're seeing right now, at least compared to the information that we have. But with shaking, with Port-au-Prince getting some of the most severe shaking out of this quake, and you can see liquefaction there. You can see there is a whole lot of devastation right here. Well, thankfully, we are probably not seeing it in this quake that is happening today. And here's the land. So just this huge area that was affected just south of the capital and into the community of Carrefour. Alright, so you see here,
I do want to mention that I'm not sure if it's liquefaction or if it's just that large pipe breaking, because a large pipe breaking doesn't equal liquefaction necessarily.
Yeah.
It's just
Liquefaction is basically just ground failure. The ground the ground would be so intense that the ground would essentially be turning into mud right underneath your feet as the earthquake was happening. You wanted to offer more comments?
So I'm still checking latest to see what actually has been going on now in Haiti. But
The capital.
hold up. No, it's definitely not from Haiti. So yeah, considering that Haiti, so I just saw a picture of like one of the first buildings we saw damaged from this quake, and it seemed that's actually some quite significant damage if that is actually what it was, because I believe that is rumored that the red building that was seen originally, like right after the quake, appears to have been a church. Quite a big church at that. So if since it looks as though that is what it was, that's actually quite significant damage. And it's justifying of that mortality rating of IX.
Yes, indeed. Here, yet again, what we are seeing here is just preliminary and is probably likely to be updated over the coming days as more information comes in.
Well, yeah, there's a chance, but right now it's at a finalish rating. Obviously they're still gonna review it, but initially when I came in, because I was actually looking at the spectrals at the time, that came in, so I was literally the first one to report it in the server. I mentioned that it looked like a massive quake, and it did not look like a 7.2%. It looked more of like a 7.5. Now, obviously, after like seeing like this S waves and stuff like that, I think it was definitely a 7.2. But I do also think that because for example, South Sandwich Islands quake, originally it was just given a 7.5, and that was that. But then over a day later, they discovered that a second larger quake of magnitude 8.1 struck, and that was added to the list. And they Justin,
What?
sorry, you just lost stack in you. But just want to but yeah, I do want to mention really quick that yeah, the South Sandwich Islands quake, it originally was just 7.5, and that was it. And then after they reviewed it for over a day, they realized that a second quake struck, and it was given an 8.1. Now, EMSC did have 2 quakes reported before, but they did remove one of the quakes. But this is you still have to keep an eye on what's going on here because um, there's been quite a lot of backlogs, and I'm not sure if all the abstracts have been reported in, because I've been seeing a ton of them, you know. So, yeah.
All right, so that is indeed fascinating, but we'll have more information for you as it comes in, I suppose.
Yep. I assume we're going to get updates about per se like death count, injury counts soon. But right now it really does not look good, especially with tons of people trapped under per se.
Yeah, of course, we will be continuing to
Yes.
update the latest as we get more information. But regardless, it looks like the most immediate thing that we'll be seeing in terms of information is likely going to be more damaged pictures that we do get out of Haiti. We're probably not going to understand the amount of fatalities that we've seen with this earthquake for quite some time, at least before some of the official numbers start pouring in. There are a whole bunch of numbers that is hearsay. Obviously, we need to be objective. We need to look at the evidence that we've got right now. And as of right now, the evidence does not give us an exact number to go off of. And that's why we have not gone with such at the moment. And obviously, as of right now, we have the Force 13 earthquake stream showing right now. Of course, that is their own separate channel associated with Force 13 in general. So you can go check those people out. It's literally just Force 13 earthquakes. They cover all the earthquakes 24/7 real time as they occur. So it's made by our very wonderful Jason. Jason has done an amazing job keeping this up, and obviously it's proven to be effective once more as we're seeing all those earthquakes pop up on stream there.
Now we stand by. So well, there's still some kinks need to be worked out with the stream, but for the most part, it's a really good stream right now. And as you've been seeing, there've been a ton of aftershocks pouring in. Within the between a mid-range 4, all the way down to like a mag 3s, like mid-range 3s. So like there have been quite a few aftershocks occurring due to this quake, and I would say for this to continue, I'd expect this to continue at least for the next 24 hours or so, with like tons of aftershocks coming in. Just like the South Sandwich Islands from like 2 days ago, where we had like a lot of Mag 5 plus aftershocks just rolling in. Now, obviously, they won't be as large as that, but they will definitely be. Speaking of the. No, wait, no. Not about the aftershocks, but about I thought a Mag 5 had just struck Haiti, but no, that was the wrong place. In fact, you can see what struck right up there. It is the South Sandwich Islands, which has obviously been having lots of aftershocks as a result of the 8.1 that struck a few days ago. So,
yeah.
So on your screen here, is more information, particularly about the Pager rating here, and as you can, and here you can see the USGS's estimate for the estimated fatalities from this quake: 19% from 100 to 1,000, 35% chance of 1,000 to 10,000 fatalities, 29% chance of 10,000 to 100,000, and 13% of over 100,000 casualties. For comparison, the 2010 earthquake resulted in 250,000 in fatalities. Fortunately, this earthquake will probably not be as overly deadly as that earthquake, but still, it is very, very, very bad. It definitely would be the deadliest earthquake of the year so far. And And the economic losses, you see here, a 34% chance of 100 million to $1 billion, which is ranging from 0 to 3% of Haiti's GDP. And here you can see the population exposure, over 643,000 people subjected to very strong shaking, a Mercalli rating of 7, and 843,000 are getting a rating of 6, strong. The rating of 7 has been exposed in the cities of Akin, Cavirion, View, Les Cayes, Saint Louis du Sud, and Petit Tro de Nipes.
And
So,
I'd like to mention that the epicenter of this quake was actually in Saint Louis du Sud, I believe. And I do want to quickly point out that I'm trying to no if you have any questions, just ping us to Force 13. We will answer them as you will show highlighted to us, and we'll be able to see it. So. But yeah, obviously we also have Fred that just hit it, and Grace that's on its way. Potentially a second one behind that. So, um, it's not if you live in Haiti, this is obviously not good.
indeed.
But right now I don't have that much more to report. I could be bringing the mention of volcanoes that have erupted today. Over the past 2 days, as I make my updated list of volcanoes that have erupted recently, or have had blasts of some sort. I usually go through that every 2 days, and I update my list accordingly. So, now's around the time where I usually do it. So, but obviously this quake, I would say volcanically speaking, there really isn't any volcanoes within the region of Haiti per se. Yeah, there are volcanoes within the Caribbean, but by Haiti, not necessarily. So, um, yeah.
Thankfully, with the latest news on the future with Haiti in terms of Tropical Storm Grace, it looks like the center will not be passing directly over that region, which means that they will be getting pretty much the southwestern part of Grace, which, given the fact that it's got quite a bit of land interaction to deal with first, it doesn't look like it's going to be as bad as it could have been for Haiti in terms of what Grace is going to do. Although this has trended a little bit stronger, now 60-mile-an-hour forecast, but thankfully it does not appear that the worst will be in the region that saw the worst impacts with the earthquake. So there is good news. That is pretty much what we've got at this point. So hopefully that trend continues and that the forecast doesn't shift south enough that to the point that it puts them in even greater of a risk.
Yeah, and if you're seeing the stream buffer, it's because I opened up a bunch of tabs. I'll be getting to the stream quick, so don't worry about that. But do you want to mention really quick that this has been an active week in earthquakes, and it's not just been with uh earthquakes in general. It's been active with volcanoes, with a bunch of volcanoes erupting for like the first time in months, in some cases even years. So do you, do you think slot
You can say it, we're losing you.
usual? Oh, sorry. It's been extremely active geophysics wise. So that's what I've been trying to say. You got me?
Yep, we got you there.
Okay. So yeah. I'll quickly name off which volcanoes have been erupting real quick. So for reference, per se, from the regions we have like Shivalush, Nepal Sichuan, Fukuoka, Okinawa, which started a few days ago. Fuego, Sakno, Shinoshima, Grimsby, Shinkodan,
You can say that we're struggling
Sabuntaya,
with your
San.
connection again.
Okay. Well, either way, there's just a lot of volcanoes. I would say there's a total of like 13 or 14 that were up there within the past day. But usually we see like or like between 7 and 8, or
Yeah,
like between 7 and 10 volcanoes per day erupt. And it's usually the same ones and not new ones or anything like that. So, just for reference as to how active today, this week has been, or this month has been volcanic wise. So,
Yeah, I kind of saw that yesterday when I was making the tropical weather bulletin. I was pulling out satellite imagery from the Western Pacific, and it came to mind that I saw what appeared to be a volcanic eruption that went on one of the Western Pacific Ocean volcanoes there. So that was interesting to see there, and it just gives light to how active this month has really been geologically in terms of volcanoes, and then of course especially the earthquake factor side of things. And as you can see, we have what we have with the magnitude 2 earthquakes worldwide so far in the last 24 hours or 48 hours, and there's just been quite a bit. And it's just been such an active month in general. The last 3 days alone, we've been seeing so many earthquakes, and that's just shown by the graph up there. You can see how we pretty much were seeing about 15 earthquakes max, and the last 3 days we've seen 15 bare minimum. Of course, with the fact that obviously the 12th was the more stronger day, with over 30 magnitude 5 and above, and quite a bit of 6.0s. So not good news I've been seeing. Although it's taken a downtrend, it comes a little bit too late, considering the fact that, unfortunately, we did get that 7.0 or 7.2 earthquake that struck the wrong location at definitely the wrong time. Still looking out for any more official reports, as right now it's pretty much been people sending their prayers out as they should be. More reposts of damage to spread awareness as to what has gone on. People trying to shed the light that Greece is still, of course, a thing that's threatening Haiti as well. And really, it's just a sad situation that we're seeing here. New damage photos that I am seeing, however, just depict the same thing, really. Just complete destruction of buildings, collapsing. It's just not a great situation at all, unfortunately, and I'm really hoping that there is an update on the hospitals soon, because the last time we checked, which was over half an hour ago, we knew that the hospitals had become overwhelmed, and that is especially never a good sign, especially when you factor in the pandemic that we've been dealing with for over a year now, of course. So, something that we're going to have to be monitoring at the latest. That is for sure.
Yeah, definitely. And there's a Blue Zone has just gotten ash from that eruption that you did mention in the Western Pacific, which was at Fukuoka, Okinawa, like I mentioned before. Although it looks like Hiroshima also erupted too. So, yeah. Give me a second. So yeah, it's just been very active overall. So
Yeah, just not a good month in terms of anything, in terms of any kind of activity that's related to natural disasters or just flat out the storms, because the timing hasn't been great either. We've seen so much that's entered the Caribbean. We see the northeastern Caribbean already, between Elsa, Fred, and now Grace. So um, it's just something that we haven't really wanted to see across portions of Hispaniola and Puerto Rico, especially. But unfortunately, it's been something we've had to deal with. And with, of course, the fact that Grace will be impacting in this area in about a few days. We're just hoping that the rainfall that we are going to be seeing associated with this doesn't make the situation dramatically worse than it already is, because this does not deserve to be any worse than it currently is. Obviously, this isn't deserved by anyone here at Haiti at all.
Indeed.
Yeah, and honestly, hopefully anything that happens with us here, as obviously it'll be inevitable, they continue to have earthquakes because it's just something that naturally happens. Hopefully it doesn't impact any more solid population centers, and if anything, hopefully doesn't affect any people at all. Because honestly, I think we've had enough so far.
Yeah, well, we'll just have to wait and see and hope for the best.
Yep, hope for the best, but unfortunately we have been understood to just live with the reality that we got to prepare for the worst. And that's something that we've been having to deal with the last few days there with the earthquakes that we keep on seeing. And today just took that much dramatic turn for the south, with the fact that we just saw that very significant earthquake across Haiti there, with what Justin mentioned earlier. We saw the USGS and their estimates right now, and the fact that there's a good chance that there's been at least 1,000 fatalities associated with this earthquake. It's just bad. It's just gut wrenching, knowing that over 1,000 people lost their lives in the moment, or will lose their lives as a result of complications or injuries from this earthquake, and it's just upsetting. Upsetting to hear that, upsetting for those who have relatives, family, any kind of that in Haiti, because that just increases worry for these people, and it's just upsetting on a level as obviously 1,000 fatalities. It's just no big deal. It's sad to hear. It makes it very emotional as a result, and it really can't be described as any other way. You can't really sugarcoat something this severe, especially when we're looking at the impacts, what we're looking at in terms of the area that this earthquake impacted. It just doesn't add up to something that can be considered good at all, and unfortunately that is the situation, the dire situation that we are looking at here.
Yes, we are probably looking at a very serious catastrophe that is well underway in Haiti.
And of course, we are about to finish the first hour of coverage on this here. If you have any questions, please feel free to send them over. As of right now, as you head into the next hour of coverage, the updated team that is joining us today is now pretty much Usgs as well as Justin, and we also have Orlando with us as well. Of course, presenting this is Xavier Burns. And Nathan should be back in a bit to help us out, of course, so we'll see what goes on there. But in the meantime, we're still looking at this. We're still going to be remaining live as a result of this situation currently ongoing. We'll try to get other stuff, of course. We do have other video updates planned and other live streams planned for the tropical cyclones active, especially considering the fact that we have Grace as well as the remnants of Fred currently active. Although it seems that some are being held off at the moment, given one of them is presently now a post-tropical cyclone. So that is kind of helping limit the load on us right now. But in the grand scheme of things, there are of course other storms that are land threats, and of course we are taking the time out on top of that to help provide the information that we can on this very significant event that warrants us to go live. Of course, as I mentioned at the beginning of the stream, this isn't something that we typically tend to go live on, especially because of the fact that, of course, we see so many of these earthquakes. But given the fact that this struck a very dire area, and the fact that we've been seeing this escalate significantly into a situation where the aftermath is just so severe, so much tolling on the people of Haiti, this was the best course of action, of course, to pull the button to go live, and this is pretty much where we're at right now in terms of the grand scheme of things. And of course, we are hoping that we get more information, any information that we can, in terms of the aftermath of the 7.2 earthquake in Haiti, of course. Alright, let's try to look through any more. Oh, you have something to say?
No, I was just wondering if anyone had any other thoughts, but yeah, I guess you could go ahead.
I looked through the chat, and I thought there would be questions about the earthquake, but it's just people talking about Linda right now, so I can't exactly answer those questions, considering we don't really have any. It's mainly about the Eastern Pacific hurricane, oddly, so we'll just continue covering the earthquake as planned. It looks like we're seeing some technical difficulties on Usgs side of things with the earthquake stream, so hopefully those are fixed soon enough. Usgs, if you are there, I don't know, but your stream there is having some severe difficulties. Okay, it's back. Okay, good. I haven't seen anything in terms of verified sources and updates on this earthquake. Of course, the images and videos have become a lot more sporadic, and the amount of new information that we're receiving off of this is not as much as we had earlier. That is what I can say as of the moment. As I said earlier, my prayers go out to Haiti, of course, hoping that everything is okay if they can be in terms of the recovery process. We're hoping that the fatality amount is not as much as it's feared, but given the location, it doesn't make things better, especially with the fact that this is coming before Grace does get here, and we all know that landslides, mudslides, of course, becomes a distinct possibility at that point as well. But as of right now, just giving a recap of what we were discussing earlier, there is a red alert for the estimated fatalities, considering the fact that the casualties are probable and disasters likely widespread. Past events with this alert level have required a national or international level response. And then, of course, that orange alert for economic losses, significant damage is likely. And with the estimated economic losses are the 0 to 3% GDP of Haiti, with at least a 35% chance that we've seen 1,000 or more fatalities, 29% chance as well for the fatality range ranging from 10,000 to 100,000. So just not good numbers at all. Anytime you see a range of 1,000 to over 10,000, that is just it's just gut-wrenching to think about it. The damage is, in terms of the economic loss, that still remains a question between 10 million to 1 billion, just a complete wide range there, given the fact that it is 34% chance it was in between the 100 million to $1 billion range in terms of the economic damages. However, there's a 33, which is literally 1% lower, that it was in the 10 to 100 million stage. So hopefully we figured out that. In terms of structures, they said that overall the population in this region resides in structures that are vulnerable to earthquake shaking. Although resistant structures exist, the predominant vulnerable building types are mud wall as well as adobe block construction. So those that were in those two types of structures mentioned, unfortunately, that is probably where the worst of the structural damage has gone into place there. As well as the fact that recent earthquakes in this area have also caused secondary hazards such as landslides that have also probably contributed to some of those fatalities that we've been probably seeing off of this. So just multiple factors that come into this when we're talking about the impact of such a severe earthquake. And of course, that is something that is going to be analyzed and looked at in terms of what we've seen, as well as the overall aftermath once we start to figure out those official numbers in terms of the damage and unfortunate fatalities that we're seeing with this. Hopefully we do get better any kind of good news soon, because obviously the news we have been receiving have not been the best. We're hoping that Haiti can recover from this. We know that parts of Haiti did not even recover fully from the 120 in 2010. So the fact that this has pretty much affected some of the same areas, it's just unknown whether this has put them back to square one, or whether we are just getting reminded that these earthquakes are so powerful. These earthquakes are just unforgiving in terms of their impact, because obviously with any kind of natural disaster, it's not going to care where it hits or how it's going to impact people. Obviously, this isn't something that is personified or anything. It's just something that naturally happens. And as a result, I mean, you just got to have awareness as to this. And I really do hope this provides awareness that things like this do happen. That these significant earthquakes do occur. And we've been seeing quite a few of them lately over the last 2 days alone, especially with the South Sandwich Islands. We saw that one with Alaska this morning, and then we saw another one right after with the Hispaniola one, the Haiti one specifically. So it's just not good that we keep seeing these. And of course, the aftershocks have calmed down considerably, with the last one only being 26 minutes ago at this point. That was the 3.9 in Les Cayes. But regardless, it's still a significant situation to be looking at in general here.
Definitely. And I'm shocked. So
I had a question. I'll get to that real quick. The question was from DB. Do you know if the people live on the mountain of the epicenter? From what I've seen in terms of the data that we have gotten in from the USGS, there was the city that saw, at least the city that they listed for the worst impacts, at least the selected city exposure. That was at Quinn, and that was a population of 5,000, with Cavillon in the second place there, with 1,000. My biggest concern comes into the category of Les Cayes, of course. That wasn't too far away. That is one of the more popular cities there, and that has a population of 126,000. Port-au-Prince was only Port-au-Prince didn't take it as hard, but they still saw some moderate impacts from this. Of course, they have 1 million people there, and then of course you saw even areas like Kingston and Santo Domingo feel some weak shaking as well, and those areas combined has over 3 million people there. So just not good news that we've been seeing. I don't know everything when it comes to population statistics about mountainous areas, of course, but the cities that are completely nearby, while they're not as populated as some of the bigger cities, there's still thousands of people that were impacted by this, and that's really never good news when you're looking at the grand scheme of things, especially when you look at the fact that Lascaux is one of the cities that saw some of the worst of things, and they have a population of over 126,000 people there. So just not good news at all.
So yeah, this is just sad, and just keeping an eye on the spectros, just to see what there are still aftershocks going on, but it looks like the aftershocks have gotten noticeably weaker, which is to be expected considering it was a strike slip earthquake, I believe. And a strike slip earthquake is not necessarily like they can be deadly, obviously, but they're they are usually not as strong as a thrust earthquake, or their potential is not as high as a, or the potential for a big strike slip is not as high as a thrust earthquake or thrust fault from thrust fault. Yeah. This is just just look at all these images. It's just there's no words that can really describe how tragic this is with all that's going on.
Yeah, just tragic in general, and it's really not something that can be explained in really any other way that would make it sound any better. Because this isn't one of those situations where you can make it sound any better. You can't. You gotta be objective. You gotta look at what we are seeing here, and it's just a very unfortunate situation. And as a result, we've been seeing the aftermath, and the aftermath is just completely bleak in terms of what we've seen in terms of Haiti's economy overall, and just how this has impacted it as a result, given the fact that the damages, the fatalities, are just looking absolutely awful in terms of the fatalities possibly being in the thousands again. That's never something you want to be seeing in an earthquake. That's just it takes an emotional toll when you're considering the fact that there could be a 4-digit number of people that's all fatalities, and it's potentially 5-digit number. So it's just not something that we hoped for or want or just want to even think about in terms of the grand scheme of things, because it's just so many people that lost their lives possibly in such a horrible way. It's these earthquakes, they just come so sudden, and they can change everything, especially for a region this economically underdeveloped. It takes a giant toll, and it takes that giant toll very quickly.
Yeah, and so this is interesting. Um, so yeah, this we have aftershocks occurring all the time from this. This is I don't have any more. Um, so
Yeah, keep in mind, if you have any questions for us to answer, please put them. Just tag us at Force13. We will be able to answer what we can in terms of the information that we do have. If some of the questions may be too specific or answers we just don't have at the moment, but we will try our best to get that information out as we continue to get more of it. So just feel free to shoot us a question or comment or anything that you think that we should know. Anything helps us out in terms of getting information on this earthquake out, anything in terms of providing what you need to know. So just let us know.
It's very sad. Anyways, as I head out for a bit, I want to bring up the point that um, the that just stay safe, keep an eye out for aftershocks because obviously there's been a bunch of aftershocks occurring. So um, please stay safe. Make sure that you have essentials with you if you can, even though it's a port country. You should try and find essentials because this was not a situation that been good, and these areas are poor infrastructure, and you know, and just waiting for the news. So,
And we're now being joined by our very own Force 13 lead, Nathan Foy, of course. Nathan, you just got home and are obviously seeing all of this going down right now. What are your thoughts on this earthquake and what we have been seeing in terms of the report so far?
Morning. I was much younger. Obviously, we all were back in 2010 when the I think a 7.0 struck the area around Western Haiti. As you know, as I've just arrived here, I'm not fully aware of all of the information. So perhaps you could help me a little bit with where exactly the earthquake struck, first of all,
So it struck
just for
west.
our viewers as well.
Yeah. So basically, it struck west southwest of the last one. Hold, I'm pulling up the card. So basically, it was 12 kilometers northeast of St. Louis de Sud. So it was west southwest of the last one. Unfortunately, it was a 7.2 with a depth of 10 kilometers. And from what we know from the USGS, they have issued a red alert for the estimated fatalities, stating that there is a 35% chance that there was a fatality range of 1,000 to 10,000, with the 29% chance that there was a 10,000 to 100,000, which is just unfortunate, to say at the very least. It's just tragic. And with the economic losses, that's more of a confusion at the moment, considering it can be ranging anywhere between 10 million and 1 billion, of course. And in terms of the population that saw the worst of things, that was over 130,000 people, with over 3 million people in general feeling some kind of shaking. In terms of structural damage, we've been seeing quite a bit of that, especially to those underdeveloped areas with building types of mud wall and adobe block construction. Those areas have been seeing the worst of things. We've seen large pipe breaks that have resulted in flooding to quickly develop as well. And there's been reports of deaths. There's been reports of significant casualties. The hospitals are already overwhelmed, which combined with the COVID pandemic that's been going on makes everything even more dire. It's just a really unsettling situation that's been developing in Haiti for the last few hours.
Yes, the damage potential is, of course, astronomical, as it usually is in this part of the world, and we've seen that 11 years ago. That was when I was just getting into all of the natural disasters back in that time period. Um, of course, with Haiti, not much has really changed in the last 10 years. Of course, there's been a couple of hurricane impacts that have caused severe problems there. Matthew, most notably in 2016. I think that's the main one that's happened in the last 10 years in terms of any natural disaster. Obviously, the poor construction of buildings will obviously not stand up to the effects of an earthquake of this magnitude. And as we look at our obviously streaming our earthquake stream, which is also live and running on our earthquake channel, Force 13 Earthquakes. Um, I'm just trying to see reference of it on there right now. Oh, there it is near the bottom. So a very shallow earthquake then. Oh no, those are aftershocks, but I'm assuming the main shock was also very shallow.
Yeah, in terms of its depth, it was 10 kilometers.
Yep. That's very shallow. So it's not an extremely deep earthquake that where most of the all of the kilometers of ground above it will soak up the the force. It's a very shallow earthquake which will have been felt um very sharply on the ground.
It's like, yeah, I mentioned earlier how it's just unfortunate timing considering the fact that Haiti just dealt with one tropical storm by the name of Fred, of course, which is right now a post-tropical cyclone, but we also have Grace on its way. While Grace will not be impacting it as hard, or impact, the center won't be going over this region of Haiti. It's still going to be dropping possibly a few inches of rain across some of the areas that have been seeing this, which are just going to enhance the threat of landslides and mudslides that we could already be seeing right now with the aftermath of this one. And we do see these landslides that developed as an aftermath of earthquakes, and with this region, that's also another factor that can easily take a lot more lives than what you would normally expect. And with such a underdeveloped region, it just makes everything a lot more unfortunate, and just it's been an emotional sequence of events that we've been seeing here, especially as we get more of those images that have come in, more of the images and videos of people that were impacted and their response to this overall.
Now, my hunch when I first heard about this and the magnitude of it is that it will be worse than the 2010 earthquake. Is there anything to corroborate that, or is that perhaps stepping over the mark? I guess the main question really is its proximity to the big population centers and, of course, the capital, Port-au-Prince.
Yeah, this
Yeah.
one's further away than that one.
Okay.
Yeah, so it's more towards the southwest, so it's still populated. It's still a very populated area, but nothing like the capital. The capital did experience, of course, effects from it, but not a direct hit.
So, while it's probably not going to be as significant as the one we saw in 2010, that really doesn't take away from the overall picture as to what impacts we will be seeing once everything, of course, is added up. It's definitely going to be significant at the very least. We still have one of the more populated cities that are in this region, of course, Les Cayes, that saw the worst of this, and that already alone has 126,000 people in it. So hopefully Les Cayes ends up recovering if they can, because obviously, like I said, the 2010 earthquake, obviously there are regions in Haiti that still have not recovered from that, and that was, of course, 11 years ago. And typically with such strong earthquakes, you would normally expect these to be, once in a lifetime or something, and well, 11 years is quite far from that. So people who have experienced the 2010 or Haiti natives, it's just a bad memory of what happened back in 2010, and it's just bringing back those memories and the damage and destruction that we're seeing. It just gives us those bad reminders of what we saw back with that earthquake.
You just saw on the screen a moment ago a new earthquake detected, a magnitude 3.8 that has occurred there as well. That's 29 minutes ago. Just reading off the bottom there, another 3.8 happened 38 minutes ago. These aftershocks, sometimes they can go on for weeks and even months. They usually start in a flurry and then they space out a little bit more. I think we've quite comfortably past the time in which it might have been a force shock. Obviously, that's people's worst nightmare, but that's not going to be the case. We're probably looking at aftershocks now for quite some time, and they can sometimes be pretty large in themselves. over magnitude 5, which would cause destructive damage in the areas near the center of the earthquake.
Yep, for sure. Pretty much been trying to figure out anything more that we can get in terms of the damage statistics. It looks like it is just you and me on stream now, so we're trying to get the information that we can out despite the window of people here. So we will see what we can do.
Yeah, very little that's coming out at the moment, obviously. In these early stages, in a breaking news story, we do expect that news is pretty slow to trickle out our main role.
Yeah, usually you see these people retweeting stuff or anything that does get out does end up obviously getting resurfaced constantly. So that's what we've been seeing with this as of right now. It usually takes a few hours before we start getting some of the more detailed numbers, and it takes even days and possibly even weeks at times before we start getting those actual numbers starting to flow in. So of course it's not going to be immediate that we see the information as to the full-on damage and the full-on impact as in terms of casualties.
And there's another one there, a 3.4 that's just happened 23 minutes ago, near that same area again. Sorry about that.
You're fine. But yeah, pretty much it's just the fact that we've seen the hospital update. We haven't gotten an update on that in over an hour now.
Actually, I do want to come in really quick. I do want to, I'm just gonna be on for a quick second. I do want to mention that there an update on the estimated fatalities that the USGS has provided. So now it is actually gotten worse based on the USGS's update from 1530 UTC or 1550 UTC actually, which is 10 minutes ago. They are now estimating 5% chance of 100 to 1,000 fatalities, 21% of 1,000 to 10,000 fatalities, 35% of 10,000 to 100,000 fatalities, and 38% of more than 100,000 fatalities from this quake.
Gee. I mean, I feel a bit that's sort of playing with numbers and trying to figure out, you know,
It's for their
using
pager. Yeah, it's for their pager.
best estimates, but it's we don't know what the number's going to be at this point.
Yes, I agree. I just wanted to mention it really quick.
Yeah, it's gonna be quite some time before we start getting some of the more closer ranges as to what we're seeing with this. Because as of right now, many of the stuff that we are getting in terms of the damage estimates and fatalities without evidence is really just hearsay at this point. And we're hoping, especially with the fact that we haven't seen an update from the hospitals in over an hour and a half now, and that was back when they had stated that they were overwhelmed completely, and that's really never a sight you want to be seeing when hospitals are completely overwhelmed and unable to house more people that need that care. And considering some of the damage pictures that we've been seeing, some of the situations people have been in as a result of this earthquake, that care is definitely essential.
Nothing new just right now. I'm just sorting out some of the things on our stream, and just looking through our chat as well as we go along. You can send in questions. I'm not sure how effective we'll be at answering them. It's obviously not our main forte on the Force 13 main channel. We do have our earthquakes page, and that is where this feed that you see on your screen is coming from. That is also running live on the Force 13 Earthquakes channel, and is always delivering the very important earthquake updates in a live feed. Of course, we felt the need to add our commentary onto it for the main channel for our international all-discipline audience, I suppose, to get the widest reach on this.
Yeah, definitely awareness was needed, and that's why we've been on the air, of course, for just under an hour and a half now, and trying to provide the latest that we can provide. Of course, we're not going to have all the information, no one is for quite some time. So we'll try to go off of what we got here, make predictions, make reasonable predictions, of course, as to what we're seeing here. Analyze what Haiti has been in terms of its economic status and how this earthquake could have impacted it. Analyze some of the damage pictures we've been seeing. Obviously, there hasn't been many that's been coming in as the last few minutes now, but regardless, the damage that we have seen, it's very much considerable. There definitely was some unrepairable damage that's not going to be fixed easily.
A lot of buildings reduced to rubble, of course. This is what you would expect. What is, and I might want to caution people using social media as well, just as we see another new earthquake there, 4.0, which has occurred 16 minutes ago, and a 3.8 18 minutes ago in the same location. Just want to point out with regards to social media, I am seeing quite a few discrepancies in that some people are posting images from the earthquake that happened in 2010. So be mindful of that, because you might be seeing pictures that we think are today when actually they're not.
Yeah, I've only been looking at verified sources for that stuff.
Yeah. So aftershock still pouring in. That's 4 in the space of 20 minutes right now. All above magnitude. Well, 3.4 was the weakest.
Yeah, pretty much magnitude 3s and 4s popping up, especially with that one city alone in Haiti, Petite Trou de Nipes, that's been seeing those aftershock after aftershock. That's now 4 in the last 37 minutes, and of course we had that Kermadec Islands one. Obviously, we're still seeing some of those aftershocks continuing from that flurry of major earthquakes we saw in the South Sandwich Islands just a few days ago, and today we've been seeing that as well from the Alaska earthquake that we had. That was a magnitude 6.9 or somewhere around that, and then of course just with the Haiti one that happened just a few minutes later. So it's been quite the active last few days in terms of the geological side of things. We've been seeing, obviously, with the volcanoes as well. Of course, as I mentioned earlier when I was making last night's TWB, I observed that West Pacific volcano eruption that actually has been affecting portions of Luzon, of course, with ash. So that's been another development that we've been watching, of course. And it's been a very geologically active week in general, between the earthquakes, the volcanoes, and then, of course, the other disasters that we've been tracking in terms of the hurricanes and typhoons as well.
Of which there was a question, how Grace can worsen the situation of Haiti now. Tropical Storm Grace formed, was it last night or this morning?
So basically, it became a tropical depression yesterday. It got upgraded to Tropical Storm Grace at 9Z. That was 5 a.m. Eastern Time. As of right now, they've actually upped the forecast as to what is expected. Now, they raised it from a peak of 50 miles an hour to a peak of now 60. And as of right now, the cone does not take the center into the region that this earthquake did impact. However, this doesn't take away from the fact that, of course, several inches of rain are still possible. Thankfully, this is a relatively small storm, which means that we're not going to be seeing, a feet of rain or anything. But regardless, just a few inches of rain could easily reinitiate those mudslides and landslides that we're already seeing as a result of this specific earthquake. So things can be worsened, but thankfully we're not dealing with a storm that's going to be that impactful in terms of what we typically see in this area, given the fact that the Grace, of course, will be going through a significant portion of the Caribbean in terms of the landmine that is known of the region. So, of course, its southwestern quadrant will probably be fractured by the time it gets there, thankfully. So that should limit some of the potential maximum impact that we're seeing out of this, which is good news. But regardless, we're still dealing with those landslides and mudslides that we're seeing right now, and those could get worsened if Grace does give them the necessary rainfall that would be required to worsen those impacts. So obviously we're hoping for the best, that obviously the southwestern quadrant is just gone by then. But obviously we got to prepare for the worst, and we got to look at the reality that obviously that still remains a distinct possibility that several inches of rain could just worsen everything that is already there.
I don't know about that. The edge of the cone is still very close to where the earthquake hit.
Yeah, the edge of the cone is near there. I'm just saying, like, the center is right now, because obviously the center, it can be anywhere between the southern end and
It's
the
a bit
northern
off
end.
there.
It's close, but which means that any southern deviation, it would be back. But as of right now, I think things have been shifting back and forth, and it's been kind of hard to get the whole sense of things. Grace has a very uncertain future, and the National Hurricane Center explicitly implied that in their forecast cone, and that it's been something that we have to monitor. The worst case situation would, of course, be to take the southern end, but the thing in this aspect side of things, if it takes that western, it would be plowing through basically every single Caribbean island before Haiti, of course. It would be going through Puerto Rico, and then it would be going right smack into the Dominican Republic, going right through the mountains, and then finally it would get to Haiti. So if it takes that more southerly end, then that would be a much weaker storm, but then we would be seeing those rainfall amounts as well. So it's really a double-edged sword that we're seeing with this.
Yeah, and regardless of what, if it keeps on going up to the more northern side of the cone of uncertainty, it's more likely that uh, we'll see more likely that stray bands would cause flooding in the northern areas affected by the earthquake. And it's equally as bad because services right now are rather overwhelmed in the country. And a lot of those regions are heavily deforested, so it doesn't take much to get mudslides and flash flooding. So honestly, regardless of what directed or not, it's going to be pretty bad.
There's another question about explaining more about the effects of a shallow earthquake versus a deep one, that they don't understand much at all regarding that. I mean, my knowledge is limited. I'm not really a seismologist, but in general, obviously the huge mass of Earth, obviously anything that has force like an earthquake, if there's more ground above it to the surface, then obviously the force will be impeded. So an extremely deep earthquake of a high magnitude might cause less damage than a shallow earthquake of a moderate latitude. Of course, this is a 7.2, which is pretty substantial. Of course, it is. It's a large earthquake. Just for reference, in 2010, I believe it was 7.0, so just slightly stronger than that. And quite often, routinely, we can get deep earthquakes out in the Pacific Ring of Fire that can get to those same magnitudes, but are much deeper, and you don't hear much about them, apart from sometimes a tsunami warning. Speaking of which, have we heard more about this potential tsunami at all?
There were tsunami warnings initially, but all of those have thankfully been discontinued.
Yeah, outside of that, supposedly there also was water in the shores were receding at the beaches, and we haven't heard anything else from that. But hopefully, nothing much comes back from it.
It,
I also want to bring up really quick that Haiti might have just had a decently sized aftershock. Um, one that would probably get a earthquake saver if you have the earthquake notification rule. So I just want to let you guys know that. Yeah, you'll probably see it on the earthquake stream shortly. So yeah.
And yeah, in terms of the water aspect of this earthquake, of course, we saw that large pipe break that did end up causing some more ruckus in terms of water being present across the impacted areas. So that's been something that we've been monitoring as well. There hasn't been any new information on that yet. It was thought to be a tsunami at first, but it was quickly confirmed by officials that it was a large pipe break that had happened, which of course is to be expected with these types of things. When you get shaking, obviously it can disrupt pipes and all, and as a result, that is what we saw with this specific earthquake. And it's not exactly an uncommon effect of these, so. There was another question that was asking, could Jamaica have been hit as well? Kingston, Jamaica did feel some weak shaking, but nothing that would put it on the damaging aspect. So while Jamaica was impacted, it was not severe really at all. So Jamaica, there's no damage reports from at this moment.
There's another one there, 3.7, which occurred at 53 minutes past the last hour. So that's 20 minutes ago. Now, obviously, it's not fully real time. We tend to hear about them about 20 minutes after they happen, roughly between 20 and 30 minutes. So that's another one, 3.7.
And of course, those aftershocks are going to continue to fill in probably for the remainder of the day. Probably going to get slower in terms of its frequency, as we've been seeing as of right now, but regardless, you can see there just in the last five aftershocks, all of them have occurred in Haiti, so it's pretty much just Haiti in terms of earthquakes that are really the significant ones right now. So of course, all the attention on the earthquake stream has pretty much gone to that at the moment for the time being as these aftershocks continue. And we are definitely hoping that this calms down some, and that we are able to have those officials there give the right directives for the citizens of Haiti who are impacted by this. Of course, I said earlier, if you have loved ones. Alright, seems we had a slight loading error. I apologize, it seems that OBS decided to have its own fun, but we're back, hopefully. Nothing really in the last 30 seconds that we probably would have lagged, but if I did cut out there, what I did say was that it would probably be a good idea if you have any family, relatives, anyone you know in Haiti, especially this region there in southwestern Haiti, try to get in touch with them. Make sure that they're all right, and making sure that they're doing the necessary things there. If they have homes destroyed, obviously have them have a plan of action in terms of what to do. Just making sure they're safe is really a good idea, obviously. This is a very dire situation that we're currently in, and with the situation looking worse in terms of the estimated amount of casualties we could be seeing with this, it's not something to joke around with. It's really something that you want to be making sure any relatives, family are okay, and hopefully that the leaders of Haiti are planning the action, having some kind of plan as to what they plan to do as a result of this unprecedented earthquake. And that's the case with all these earthquakes. You're not expecting to get them. They just come, and there's really just very, very, very little lead time. It just happens, and things can change in an instant. It's the unfortunate truth that we see from these.
And that is one big problem which we'll come on to in a moment. At 4.1 just there near the Philippines, that's an area that we've been looking at as well prior to this, off the southern part of Mindanao. But regards information and data on how things have progressed in terms of natural disasters, tropical cyclones used to cause a very large amount of fatalities, but as warning systems have evolved massively, they've actually gone down a lot. And earthquake fatalities over the years have actually gone up, mainly due to population increases, and obviously we haven't managed to improve very much on forecasting them because they are very difficult to forecast. Very little warning, if any, at all.
Yep, indeed, and that's been something that we've been trying to figure out how to get more lead time with. I know seismologists are always in the studying of these earthquakes, and obviously it's kind of hard to get lead time. This is like the type of natural disaster that you get the least lead time out of, just because of how sudden they can happen. and it's just something that occurs so often. Unfortunately, I've been seeing a lot of those this month in general, and this is definitely going to be the deadliest so far of 2021 in general. So it's just unfortunate that we've seen this, um, and we're hoping that there are efforts to, hopefully Haiti can recover not only with this earthquake, but hopefully they can, uh, put themselves in a better standpoint when it comes to these, especially considering the fact that this will likely happen again, considering the fact that we've been seeing these once every 10 or so years. I mean, earthquakes happen not too far rarely when it comes to these, so it's just, with how economically underdeveloped Haiti is, we're just hoping that there is a way that they can do what is right for them to, get those better structures. Because obviously hurricanes, um, these earthquakes, they're just a tag team that does exactly help them out at all.
Now, Xavier, our earthquake channel are actually in here. Someone's manning that right now, probably Jason or someone over there, saying that there's been another 5.0 in Haiti in the last few minutes.
Probably another aftershock, unfortunately, and this is probably one of the stronger ones that we've seen. Unfortunate that we're still seeing those quite active, potentially somewhat significant aftershocks that are probably just going to further worsen everything we've already been seeing. Of course, 5.0 is definitely something that is going to be felt. More shaking, more light damage possible on the already collapsed things that can already worsen the conditions we're seeing with that rubble there. So just not good news that we're just continuing to see those aftershocks above 4.0 magnitude. So
to recap the information then, a magnitude 7.2 earthquake occurred in the southwestern part of Haiti at around 12:30 UTC, which would be 4 hours ago. Local time, that would be, trying to think that through, about 8 in the morning, was it? At some point earlier on in the morning. Followed by many aftershocks at this point, and a growing number of them.
we had another question in the chat. This was someone asking, could aftershocks could do more damage after the earthquake? Definitely is possible. Like we said, it's become hard to get information regarding the amount of damage we've been seeing with this, of course. There hasn't been much that has gone out over the last half hour in terms of information. It's just predictions from the USGS as to how severe this event could have been. And obviously, as of right now, we can't exactly say that that for sure. We have to take with a grain of salt as to what's going on there. So, of course, we're not going to have the final details, the final information as to what's going on for a bit more time. So that's going to be something we're going to have to be monitoring for now. But obviously, aftershocks have had a tendency of causing things to be a little bit more worse than they were before. So they have like an extra effect on what we already saw.
Yeah, and it also is a detriment when it's a strong earthquake and you have something that's uh, weaker than it, but also still significant. And what ends up resulting is any structures that did manage to withstand the initial earthquake and took some damage, but still standing well sounded on the foundation. Well, now another earthquake happens as an aftershock, and what ends up happening is pretty much that building could end up collapsing or suffer even more, and that threatens more lives because more people, initially would believe, after the main earthquake happens, the worst is over, and so these aftershocks can easily catch them off guard. So it's not a help to anyone.
Yeah, beyond the headlines, there's not too much that we've got information of at this point. Just that it's obviously a very severe earthquake. Um, and I'm just looking through. There's obviously a lot of people giving thoughts about it online, but I'm not seeing much in the way of useful information that we can share.
Yeah, it's going to be the case for quite some time, as we still have a very limited array of information, as obviously it's going to be some time before we get officials coming in and surveying what happened, and then of course the actual magnitude of what we saw in terms of the destruction of the casualties. So it's going to take days to weeks, maybe a little bit longer before we get the full idea as to how significant this earthquake really impacted Haiti, of course. But regardless, it definitely does appear that this was significant. So.
And there at last is the 5.0 on the earthquake dashboard on our live earthquake stream. So that's the information about it. 15 minutes ago, we heard about it just when it happened. So that is just a confirmation of what we were talking about a few minutes ago. A 5.0 earthquake. That, interestingly, is much deeper at 35 miles. It would still have been felt quite apparent, but that was a little deeper, which is interesting. Usually, when you get swarms of earthquakes, they tend to be very close to each other, not only in terms of location on a map, but also um, on the other axis when you go down towards the depth.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah,
I'll check some of my other sources.
Yeah, I'm pretty much monitoring for questions at the moment. As I've said twice now, my prayers, of course, go out to those in Haiti, obviously, as we are watching this situation unfold. It's a very dire situation at that. We've already seen many reports of a significant amount of casualties, and of course, that is very much unfortunate. We're still going to be watching this situation evolve behind the scenes when we do go off, of course, and obviously we will try to provide the necessary information, of course. And obviously we are covering off the Force 13 earthquake channel. They have an amazing stream going on right now, obviously. A lot of work has been put into this, and it's meant to get out the information on all the earthquakes that happen, especially the significant ones. And with this one, it is definitely a good time to be seeing that one if you want the real-time updates as to the earthquakes that we are seeing with today. And you can see that map of all the earthquakes that we've had in the last 48 hours, and there's quite a few for sure. 611 in the last 48 hours worldwide, so quite a busy geologically active time for sure. But obviously most of our attention right now is on that Haiti one, and then of course Alaska did all have that 7.0 earthquake earlier, and that was near Pennyville, Alaska, the last I checked. So just two big earthquakes that we've seen today of magnitude 7 or higher.
Now, just showing this again, 5.1. I think that must have been revised because there's only been one. Trying to make sense of that. Yeah, that's not a new earthquake. That must be the same one that we were just talking about. It's just showing it again. So as far as I gather, there have been obviously the 7.2 and 2 magnitude 5 plus since then as well.
Mm-hmm. And of course, as we've reiterated, if you have any questions about this earthquake, feel free to ping us at Force 13. We'll try to answer them with what information we do have. Can't exactly guarantee the best of an answer given the fact this isn't like hurricanes or severe coverage where we have the information right off the bat usually, or have an idea of what's going to happen next. That, and of course, some of us aren't exactly the most well versed on our earthquake knowledge. We do try our best, of course. These earthquakes are not exactly the type of event where you get information ASAP. This is where you typically wait the longest in terms of natural events, that in terms of getting the information as to what happened and what the toll of everything is. So it's definitely going to take some time before we do get some final numbers as to what happened.
Yeah, I'm still not seeing that. There's been no news releases from authorities or aid groups really at this point, as far as I can tell. There's some um, videos and such of rescues going on. That will be the main thing that's happening down there right now and throughout the whole day, most likely, and beyond. When you think about that fatality potential, um, how many people may also be injured and or trapped. Um, there's going to be a massive rescue effort that's going on today, and I imagine that would be taking up everyone's resources, so we probably won't hear much because of that, not necessarily because, um, because communications are crippled and what have you.
Yeah, exactly. We're going to be taking some time. So obviously the biggest focus is going to be saving those lives that need saving, obviously. I'm unsure of what's going to happen given the fact that those hospitals are overwhelmed. So hopefully there is a backup in terms of areas that these people that are injured can receive care, because that is definitely going to be pivotal as to the future of those operations after in the aftermath of this earthquake. Of course, injured, it looks to be definitely up there. There's been quite the amount of official images that have gone out with people trapped, and it's just not a good situation to be in. There's going to be that care that is needed, and if the hospitals are overwhelmed, there's got to be a backup that needs to be planned out effectively, so that way those rescue operations do not turn into a confusion as to what's going to happen if the hospitals are this full.
There was another question about why the webcam is down there as well. That was set up by the people who programmed the earthquake stream. It must be that something's going on there at that volcano, which I'll try to pronounce for you. Popocatépetl, I think, in Mexico. I don't have information about that. I assume they are monitoring it for some reason or other. You'll have to check up with the earthquake stream for that information.
Yet another question about the Perryville, Lasco. Of course, that was another 7.0 earthquake that we had today, and that was a 10-kilometer one, so another shallow one. However, from what I know, that region of Alaska does not exactly have that much of a population center, especially when you compare it to the one with the 7.2. Nor have we seen much in terms of reports from that at all. Most of the focus has really been placed on the 7.2 that we had in Haiti.
32 minutes apart, those as well.
Yeah, those really far apart because when I joined some of the other people that were here at the time, they were talking about how they were discussing that Alaska earthquake after it happened, and then all of a sudden that earthquake happened with the 7.2 there, and then that's where all the focus immediately focused on that one.
Yep. With not much coming in, and probably not for a while, Xavier, do you think now maybe the time that we finish up our coverage on the main channel at least.
Yep, and of course we've also got the Force 13 earthquake, so of course after this stream ends you can easily search up Force 13 earthquakes. It will provide that live stream that is 24/7, and that will provide real-time coverage as best as humanly possible as real-time automated streaming service, really, in terms of the earthquake side of things. So that will be something we do. Of course, we also have other things that we'll be releasing today in terms of everything else going on. With the tropics, of course, with Grace, 16W, as both of those are land threats, Grace to the Caribbean, 16W to Guam. Fred, I don't know what's going to happen with that one at the moment, considering the fact that all warnings have literally been discontinued at the moment, and the fact that it's actually dead for right now, so we'll see what goes on with that.
Yeah, for our hurricane audience savior, we'll be running an automated floater on Linda shortly as well.
Yep, and of course Linda did become a Category 4 earlier, so we will be watching that one as well. Thankfully, that is the storm that is not the threat to land. That would have been bad if it was a Category 4 and the threat to land, so of course we'll keep you updated. But as of right now, with the little information that we're getting, we will be cutting this at this point. Thank you to the people who were here, and of course we'll be ending this with just Nathan and Orlando, as well as me presenting Xavier Burns. So thank you guys for taking the time. We definitely do accept the fact that you guys have definitely put in those prayers. That is just showing that you guys definitely are caring. This is definitely a dire situation. And of course we do thank that person that did give us that $20 donation earlier. So kudos to that. We do use those donations to help better the project in the ways that we can. So with that, we will be cutting it here. Thank you for watching, and we'll keep you updated on our social media as well as our YouTube channel.